All right, so we've relaunched the software on the second monitor right now. A couple things. First off, you can see your new still is here by default. Second, you can see these extra buttons I'm talking about. Now you may notice that the screen, the actual inputs look much smaller, or the buttons look a little bit smaller. You know, we've set the resolution to be a higher resolution, so everything just looks a little smaller on the screen. The nice thing about it is we do get these additional buttons for us to work with. So I'm going to go right away now and load these. The screen resolution on this monitor does not allow for as as much area.
Okay. So you didn't want to add anything
right.
because of the resolution.
Yeah, we needed it to be a little bit taller for some reason. So maybe at the end of the day, like a 32-inch monitor here, or two of them even would be fantastic. 24-inch or whatever.
So the height and the width.
Yeah. So we're going to go to Time Machine now. And we'll call up our clips. And we're just going to ignore that for now. So that's our two TM7s right there. And let's go back to this one and call up a couple more. So now we have all of them, and I can actually move TM5 over here if we want. Which one? That's 04. And that's this guy. So now you've got TM5, then sandwiched by TM7, or TM7 sandwiched by TM5. Let's just loop them all. You guys know what loop is? Turning on loop will just basically play the clip over and over. So here's all 4 of your clips, right? And so now they're all 4 running, and they'll all 4 run. So the question was, how do I have a different one for every key? So, cameras right now, this is we need to move cameras down because when I put this up, it's going to kill Time Machine clips. So there's one, right? And, if I wanted to queue up the other camera.
You put that in the key button,
right? So it takes over the shot. So, but once we move cards around, basically you would just choose the camera you want with the background you want, right? And then you'd literally just cut back and forth. So for example,
so these highlighters are you choosing, you say,
right? So right now, if I cut back and forth, let's just put TM7 down here. What's going to happen is it's going to cut cameras and backgrounds simultaneously. See that? So one of them has the Earth spinning back there, and the other one does not. Right? The other one has this graphic. So now, and you can see on our interface what's happening here as well. So the key buses, key preview and key, are cutting back and forth, as well as the TMs, right? Now you're like, well, what about the third camera or the fourth camera? All right, what you would do is you just go to your 4th camera source or your 3rd camera source on key preview and choose your 3rd camera background on preview, and then cut to that. There's nothing on that source, but that's how you would accomplish that. You cut back to your other key source, and I'm stepping on these inputs again, I think. But once I make that swap, we can go over that again. So you guys can do that. But that's essentially how you would do that.
On the preview monitor, you can't have multiple camera inputs.
Actually, you can. If you take, for example, I'm just going to move this monitor over, and we're going to go to panels. It's called input monitors. And we're going to change this to large view, and we're going to scale it to fit. All right, so we're going to move this guy over a little bit. So these are all your sources coming in. We'll just hit start all. All right, so now what you're going to notice though is that your frame rate overall drops dramatically when you're running all of these monitors, because the card that is responsible for this is dividing up its frame rate amongst all running sources. So you don't want to necessarily run all of them. You can stop, let's say we stop this one, and we stop this one, and we stop this one, and we stop this one. As I stop these, the frame rate gets better and better in the ones that are running.
So if we just want to use EB cameras, we could get the 3 running.
Right, and you can actually even go as far as to minimize, the interface to just view whatever you want, right? And then you can save this layout. Let's say this is a layout I like. Create a new bin for your effects or whatever, sampler, and then you just right click and hit save layout. So we talked about that earlier on, having your own layout saved. So like maybe your morning show, this is all you want to see for your morning show. So here's my layout file that I just made. It kind of looks like the interface, the little blocks here. So you got one big block, that's this. One smaller block here, that's this. This block over here, that's this. So, you could rename this now. You could call it morning show. Moron show. Morning show. Right? And so you could have that, and you could make a copy of that and put it somewhere like in a folder you've created. So if I say copy, and maybe back in the bins directory, I created a folder called settings, and I just paste this in here so I have a copy of it. And that way, if I come in and something else is going on, maybe somebody was in here and was doing something else, I can just double click on this and it brings up everything I need. Right?
So your default is first on the effects, then you can drag it to any other folder that you're comfortable with.
Correct. And you can actually set that as a default. You can set the morning show one as a default if you want to as well. Just by once you've saved it out, you're going to right click on it and actually choose set as default layout.
So when I go morning, it will come up with that.
Right. Or any time of day. Once you set this as the default, it comes up that way
All the time. Oh, okay. Or just one default setting all the time.
Correct.
But if I have like morning, afternoon shows, I want to set a default for the morning, a default for the afternoon, a default for night, then I would
you go and double click on the one you want.
make them all
Right.
default.
So when you would go in the afternoon, you'd have another one called afternoon. Like let's say this is the afternoon right here. So I'm going to go into my settings folder and I'm going to save another layout. Save layout. And we'll call this, rename it afternoon. Right? So I'm currently in afternoon. So I just double click on morning and now I'm back at morning. And then go back into bins, settings, and choose afternoon. And that can be, all these folders can be directly related to the content of the show. So if you've created a folder called, the news stills or something like that, that can be what's open whenever you double click on that.
That'll be very helpful for the show.
Yeah, navigating content. You find when you do a lot of things here, like when you have all these, if you're going to start relying on GlobeCaster to do a lot of the live graphics and stuff, you're going to spend a lot of time navigating around trying to find this stuff.
So you do a good filing system.
Right. So a good filing system is key, and
Layout.
is key. So if you don't have to go and spend 5 minutes every day, moving folders and setting stuff up, then that's 5 more minutes you can be focused on what's going on out there, or audio, or whatever.
So layout remains the same, just the content change.
Or the layout can change too. I mean, if you want your monitor for some
I'm saying
reason,
if it's working for the show specifically, then the layout will remain the same.
Right.
Just
Change
content on a daily
folders.
basis, yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Now this obviously one key and all that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The older ones we only had.
Right.
So can you just explain me
Sure.
that?
Sure. So these rows here, I mean, program preview are obvious. It's program preview.
Yeah.
Key preview, and aux. Key is the current camera that you're keying. Key preview is the camera that you're next keying.
That's on preview.
That's on preview, yeah.
And that will come on the bottom preview box.
Correct. They're tied together.
Okay.
So aux is used used for, I use it for 2 things. I use it for certain special effects. For example, if I go into effects and go into PAL dual warp, picture in picture, I'm going to make these larger so you can see them a little bit better. I did that by the way by right-clicking on the A button. You can choose large, small, list, detail, all that stuff. So in these effects, anywhere where you see color bars, it's actually referring to the aux source. Anywhere you see an oval, it's actually referring to the program source. And the triangle is preview. So a quick example of that would be, let's just run this effect. I'm double clicking on this. It's just program and preview. Okay, that's TM5 and here. So we'll use live camera sources, which makes a little more sense. All right, so there's your two live camera sources. Okay, camera 5 is on program, camera 6 is on preview.
Why isn't it changing on that?
Yeah, I think because when I closed my monitors out, I went to output scope and then outputs again. I just kind of kicked it in the right place. Basically, sometimes you got to kick GlobeCaster in the right place to make it do what you want. So anyway, yeah, it's updating now. So these ones that use aux, let's go ahead and look at that for a second. So I'm going to double click on this effect and it loads up here. So my aux source is going to be, let's say it's going to be Time Machine 7. Okay. When I run this effect, there's Time Machine 7. Okay, it's going to drop down the preview, which is 6, and in this case, it's going to bring forward preview and create it and it becomes program. So it's just
the effect that saves on.
Yeah, these are effects that allow you to use 3 sources instead of just 2. All right.
Jeremy, when the toggle key is off, are you able to maneuver with?
So each effect, one effect is loaded each time. If you're loading the next effect, it drops over the previous one.
Correct. Any kind of warp effect. We call these warp effects because it takes the image and scales it or modifies the image, makes it smaller, moves it across the screen. They are mutually exclusive. They can only be one loaded at a time. Then to answer your question about the toggle key, so what that is referring to is whenever you're keying, chroma keying, it will lock program and preview with key and key preview. So if you turn toggle key off, and let's say you're chroma keying, right, and you're keying over, I don't know, this way, okay? So when I cut away, with toggle key turned on, by cutting, it'll turn the key off. But without toggle key turned on, it'll just leave the key on.
So you could just key for one event only.
I say that, it cut it off. But it locks the key and key preview is what it does. And if there's nothing on the key preview, it usually will turn the key off.
So between you and program, the key is basically locked on to whatever goes on.
Correct.
Yeah. Becomes locked.
Yeah.
So you can't be able to see
So if you key in a scroll or something, as you switch into a different source, it's going to be there.
Right. And it's all about the chroma key. Toggle key is all about chroma key. That's all there is to it. So let's see here. What else?
The inputs. Input settings.
Input settings, yeah. So we'll go through that. We'll go that on some of the inputs here.
Okay.
So if I right-click on any input, you get a pop-up menu. It's pretty long. Input settings, advanced input settings, and color correction. So we'll start with input settings. It's simple. Basically, in this situation, we've got SDI inputs. There's nothing to change there. The component inputs can be changed from YUV to RGB. For example, when we first started up today, it was an RGB mode by default, which makes the image look green. And we'll put it back to YUV, which makes the image look like it should. That's pretty simple stuff. If you go into advanced input settings, you have more options here.
If we have utilizing input settings,
Yes, sure.
we
5 minutes.
could open this advanced input setting, but we could never touch because we really didn't understand what to do.
Right.
maybe a little bit of there as well.
Okay. So first, to dispel your fear about touching stuff in here, there's a reset button which will always take it back to the factory default. If you do find something you really like, there's a save button in here. So like, let's just say, for example, I really like the fact that, I've trimmed the gain up and, maybe changed the phase, So here's another, effect, maybe you want to. Yeah. So, just trying to, play around. I don't know why you'd want to do this actually, but maybe you maybe you would want to do this,
I just want to, make sure.
Yeah.
Because we would try something and say, okay, never mind, don't worry about it, because we don't know anything, so we go back to reset and
reset it. Yeah.
You can do that and then go call Farad and tell him he's got to go.
And then
Try and figure it out.
he'll call me up and he'll say
2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And then on the input settings, there's those buttons there, those indicators, red lights.
One other thing I'll say about it is, like on the component inputs, the format out can be set for a composite in case you want to monitor the output of the component input. You don't want to use component. That'll come into play when you get monitors for that.
So basically, your monitor setting out for it would be done there.
Yes.
So if I got my monitors here, like
Correct.
Cameras and
Correct.
things like that, I could
You can set that here. Yeah.
So it's best it comes to the GlobeCast and then goes out to my monitor.
Yes. For
So
sure.
the same image is what's going out on preview.
Right. So, and as far as the input settings are concerned, these lights indicate sync status or gen lock. So, your two cameras are gen locked out there right now, probably because we ran black bursts out of the back of the GlobeCaster into the CCU. If you were to remove the gen lock or the reference or whatever it's called on the back of the CCU, you would see these lights go red.
And you're going to have a cable to run through from the GlobeCaster to all your devices on the gen lock.
Correct. Or from the GlobeCaster to a what they call distribution amplifier, which is taking the signal and splitting it.
And then you create a loop.
Yeah, and then you go to all the different devices you want. Right now we're doing, I think it's probably daisy chained. They call it daisy chaining. Yeah, you just one to the next to the next. Yeah. And then terminate at the end.
Were you saying that?
Does it have to complicate it, or you just can terminate it? The last device.
The last device needs to be terminated.
So there's just one line that is coming through.
Correct.
Okay.
Were you saying that you want your camera monitors going first, your signal going into GlobeCast and then to your camera monitors? But then don't you want your camera to go to your camera monitor first, because usually that's A-grade monitors.
Well, you can go.
See what
you just don't want. If you turn off the camera monitor, or somebody bumps the camera monitor off, then you no longer have a signal maybe at the GlobeCast.
no, just only if it goes to the GlobeCast first. You can't really see the quality picture, what's color temperature and all that is right on the camera. You have to manually look on the camera.
It's just passing the signal through. So the throughput on it is not. There's
just going through.
Right. There's no effect that's going to be applied to it.
Okay.
So
So if I change adjusting on my CCU, it goes straight into going to my monitor.
correct.
Okay.
And it's going to go into the GlobeCaster
Yeah,
as well.
GlobeCaster, yes.
But
The monitor.
I'm saying if we did anything funny in here with the color or something like that, you wouldn't see that on the
So it's a
throughput.
normal through.
Correct. That's only on the program out. You wouldn't see that.
You won't lose like.
Now on the monitor, program monitor, there's the output. When
Yeah.
you click that, I usually used to get
The scope.
scope. Yeah, what exactly is that for?
Vector Y. It's basically to tell you where you're at in color and if you're within legal limits. If you're outside of it. So for example, this is obviously green to blue. So you can see a lot of it hanging out in here. You can pull up color bars to see where it should line up. So here's some
So could you
bars.
align a sync using that?
Yes,
But that have to be adjusted with the device, eh?
correct. So, if we take, any of these test bars, like that's 100% right there. There's 75%. You can see it come down a bit. But it's lined up in these little dots.
This is just an indicator.
Correct. It's just to make sure that you're seeing a signal. Number one. Number two, it can help in terms of determining whether or not you're within legal limits of bright and dark. Your blacks and your.
There's a reference to adjustments.
Correct. Like if you need to make an adjustment, for example, you could put up color bars on your camera, and then bring that in and monitor that on the scope and dial it in and make sure that everything's correct.
So you could take your white level.
Correct. Or you could take your camera and point it at a test chart, or color chart, and make adjustments to know that your camera is set properly. The shading on your.
If I got this and I want to just check my color bars is all lined up, I could play color bar tape and I could set it up there.
Correct.
And then the colors all being
and then you know that your color on the tape is correct.
Correct.
And you can adjust these things on your input settings or your correction.
So all devices will be showing the same type of color corrections.
Where's Farad? Farad.
Does it apply to chroma key?
Yeah, I mean it's any live image that you have coming in. You can your settings for it and use the scope to help you understand where you're at. Yeah. So Y and vector, and then you've got blue and red and parade. So that's Y, blue and red, or green, blue, red.
Tony, just carry on here. I'm coming now. I put it on. Then you can come through here.
What scopes do you get here?
The vector, a Y waveform, blue, red, and then parade shows you all three. So let's see here.
It's really amazing. I mean, these scopes, they're expensive.
Oh yeah.
If you buy the scopes, and these days, I mean, Adobe's got the scopes built in, all the software's got scopes
Yeah,
built in. But buy them standalone.